Recently, a megachurch pastor by the name of Creflo, ironic name, isn't it, asked for donations to purchase a $65 million airplane for his ministry. 1 Timothy chapter 6 says, "But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows." Apparently, Creflo told people to sow their love gift of any amount to help purchase the jet. Judah Engelmeyer, a spokesman for Creflo's ministry, told reporters that members of the ministry travel for much of the year bringing their message, food, and supplies to people around the world. He said that they need a plane that's fuel efficient, faster, and with enough cargo capacity and enough seats. Matthew chapter 6 says, "No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon," which means money. You cannot serve God and money. Now, I'm not against funding the church and the church needs. I fully believe that the church needs to be well funded for various reasons. The most important reason is preaching the gospel. The church must be well funded for the purpose of preaching the gospel, and if a nice church building with a fully supported pastor is part of the mission for preaching the gospel, then by all means, I'd say having plenty of funds is justified. I would also say that the church has a mission outside of preaching the gospel. I believe that the church has a real responsibility to clothe, feed, and house the poor. God has blessed many of us with wealth and prosperity for the purpose of being a blessing to the less fortunate. A Christian who hoards his wealth for himself and is not rich towards God is a lousy and useless Christian. And by the way, that not only goes for Christians, it also goes for other people as well. Now, suppose that the pastor of a church requested donations to build a homeless shelter in which he could house, clothe, and feed the poor in his community. Suppose he wanted to make the homeless shelter top of the line. I believe that he would be completely justified in making such a request. But now suppose that the pastor of the church proposed to the entire congregation that he needed to purchase a brand new Lamborghini for $500,000 so he could drive back and forth between the church and the homeless shelter so he could help feed the poor and preach the gospel to them. Do you think that his request would be justified? Do you think that having a $500,000 car would be for a good cause? There's no doubt that having a homeless shelter is a great cause, but what would be the point of having a Lamborghini? Why can't he request that the church purchase a brand new commercial van? The cost would be a fraction of the price of what a Lamborghini would be. It could transport much more supplies and it is far more practical for everyday use. This is how silly it is to read about this pastor's decision to purchase a $65 million jet for the purpose of spreading the gospel. With $65 million, Creflo could purchase endless amounts of supplies and contract out a Boeing 747 to deliver supplies to people who live across the globe several times. With $65 million, Creflo could build several homeless shelters in Atlanta, Georgia, where his ministry is located, and which is home to more than 6,000 homeless people. With that much money, he can make the homeless shelters state-of-the-art, being fully furnished with beds, couches, private bathrooms, and even flat-screen TVs so his residents could watch his preaching on Sundays. According to one source, Creflo has 3 homes worth more than $2 million each. If he could spend that much money on houses that may hold only one family at a time, why can't he spend that same amount of money on housing complexes that could house more than 400 homeless families at a time? Why does his ministry need that kind of luxury aircraft to get him to and fro? The Bible clearly gives examples of rich Christian men. One perfect example is King Solomon. Solomon loved the Lord, and he was the wealthiest man in the Bible. But Solomon used his wealth to further the work of God by constructing the greatest church building in the history of mankind, which is the temple. He used his wealth for a good purpose. What we see in the churches today is something different. People are using the wealth God gives them for selfish purposes, and much of the money that could be used for a good cause ends up going to waste. 2 Corinthians chapter 8 says, "For I mean not that other men be eased and ye burdened, but by inequality, that now at this time your abundance may be a supply for their want, that their abundance also may be a supply for your want, that there may be equality. As it is written, he that had gathered much had nothing over, and he that gathered little had no lack." The Bible here gives specific instructions on what to do with one's wealth. It tells us that our abundance should be for the supply of someone else's needs. When pastors go around asking to raise money for a commercial vehicle to transport supplies, that's understandable. But when they ask for money to purchase a Lamborghini-styled private jet, somebody has to step in and say something. This is going too far. Thank you for listening to The Value of Truth. I'm Brian Price.